That was Kilmer Abrego Garcia turning himself in to immigration officials at an ICE field office in Baltimore just a few hours ago. He and his wife shared a tear-filled goodbye, and then Abrego Garcia was quickly taken into ICE custody. Now, the Department of Homeland Security says he's being processed for deportation. He spoke to the crowd of supporters and protesters beforehand through an interpreter.
To all the families who have been separated, or to all the families who have been threatened with family separation, this administration has hit us hard. But I want to tell you guys something. God is with us, and God will never leave us. God will bring justice to all of the injustice that we are suffering.
CNN's Priscilla Alvarez is following Abrego Garcia's case. So, Priscilla, Garcia's attorney suggested this morning that they did not know he was going to be arrested this morning, and they were told he was just actually going to be interviewed by ICE officials when they went there. So what happened?
Well, the intention was that it was a mandatory check-in where an interview would happen, but his attorney did expect that it was possible that he would be detained. That is something that Trump administration officials have repeatedly said was an option if and when he was released from criminal custody, which happened last Friday in Tennessee. Now, I was there on the ground, and it all happened really within an hour. Abrego Garcia, as you see there, spoke to the crowd, thanked his family and community organizers as well as religious leaders, and then embracing his wife, went up to the federal building along with his attorney, where he turned himself into Immigration and Customs Enforcement. About 45 minutes later, his attorney was the one who departed the building and said that Abrego Garcia had been taken into custody. Now the big question is, where will he be deported? Well, in addition to announcing to reporters that he had been maintained in custody, his attorney also said that they filed a new lawsuit challenging his detainment and his deportation. Specifically, where? So the Trump administration had offered a plea deal for Abrego Garcia to plead to federal charges, carry out his criminal sentence in the U.S., and then be deported to Costa Rica. If not, he would be deported to Uganda, a country with which he has no ties, but an approach the administration has been taking often in sending deportees to these far-flung countries. Now, the administration similarly went on to say that if he didn't, again, Uganda would be the option. Now, the attorneys are blocking this potential deportation, and this is how his attorney described the predicament as it is.
The fact that they're holding, Costa Rica as a carrot and using Uganda as a stick to try to coerce him to plead guilty to a crime is such clear evidence that they're weaponizing the immigration system in a matter that is completely unconstitutional.
All right, Priscilla Alvarez, thank you so much for that report. My excellent panel's reporters are back here at the table. So why is this, why is the administration so gung-ho on this case? I mean, the way they've handled this has really been something to see, right? Back in March, they admitted in court that he was mistakenly deported. One of their attorneys did. The courts said they need to facilitate the release of him from El Salvador back to the United States, and then begrudgingly, the administration ultimately did. Now they're threatening to send him to Uganda if he does not agree to plead guilty to a crime here. They say he can go to Costa Rica instead. They don't want to do that. But what is your insight and what are you hearing from your own sources about why they have made this a centerpiece of their fight on immigration?
I mean, if you look at Donald Trump's career in politics, there's been a few prevailing mantras, and one of them is don't admit mistakes. Don't say you did something wrong. He has almost never done so. And so with this case in particular, it is the centerpiece of a larger policy, a larger effort led by Stephen Miller and other hardline immigration forces within this administration that want to try to deport as many people as possible. This was a talking point for Trump in 2015, 2016, and it has been a through line through his entire political career and both terms of his presidency. And with this case, they do not want to show any sort of care or caution in terms of that they made a mistake. That is not the belief of this administration, and so they are trying to do everything they can to show that they are going to pursue the most aggressive policy as possible, in part to protect the president's own image, but also as what they believe is a deterrent to other people to try to get them not to come into
Yeah,
the
I mean,
country.
and the
threat.
and the politics are very clear. This obviously been a key issue for Trump all along. They believe it's a winning issue, but it's having an impact on communities as well. This is what our reporters at CNN here reported this weekend, quoting the headline, "It's like one day everyone left. How immigration crackdowns are reshaping America." They quoted someone who's a jewelry seller saying, "People are scared of being arrested just for being outside. There is always this tension, this feeling that something could happen."
Yeah, and that's the risk, in addition to all the what was mentioned, the risk of how it could impact communities, the economy, and the risk that it backfires. You mentioned also, for example, that this was central to Trump's campaign. The attack on Democrats as being focused on they, them was also central. But both his immigration message and his anti-trans message ultimately were packaged as the economy, that the Biden administration is too focused on things that are harmful to the economy. And so the question is, could these things now backfire on him? Because people are saying, actually, these crackdowns could be, the opposite. They're not helping the economy. The promises that Trump made aren't coming to fruition. And by the way, I also see him in his administration taking people off the streets, and that's not what I voted for.
And we've seen some evidence from voters that not all of these tactics wear well. So when the Abrego Garcia case was prominently in the news in the spring, when, as you acknowledge, the administration acknowledged in court that they did this incorrectly, the initial deportation, that was not wearing well. His immigration numbers started going down. Then after the LA crackdown, we saw some hit on his immigration numbers as well. And I think it's interesting, to tie it back to our first segment, that when he talks about DC or taking over the city, yes, he acknowledges getting some bad guys out, or like the Attorney General did today in the Oval Office. That's not the president's focus on this. He's hammering other points. He goes to the beautification. He goes to making sure the city's more livable. It's not just this relentless focus on an immigration crackdown, which is clearly part of what is going on with the D.C. takeover as well. And I think that's because he's aware, while immigration is his life force in American politics, and it is an issue that resonates for his base, when he potentially oversteps, it doesn't necessarily serve his political interests as well, and I think you see him aware of that fact at times.
Very quickly before we go to break.
To what Jeff Zeleny was saying at the beginning, the theme of this month has been a lot of authoritarian stuff. It is a question of how much Americans are willing to tolerate in that way for all, whether it's an immigration crackdown or crime, whatever. These are authoritarian moves. There will be some appetite for it for some people, and there may be some backlash for other people.
Yeah.
That's what we have to see.
As we often see, an administration comes in, they tend to overreach, regardless of party, and the midterm elections, they tend to get blown back a bit by the voters. We'll see if that ultimately happens next year.